is a wake-up call. Look, the phrases free-to-play and live service, whether by themselves or in combination with one another, don't fill players with a lot of confidence, and they shouldn't.
5 months. 5 months ago, a YouTuber named Legendary Drops released a video called Warframe is a Wake-Up Call. Or rather, is it a wake-up call, or is Warframe just what everyone needs to play? That's what I'm going to discuss in this video. To get the basics out of the way, Warframe is a MMO, roguelike, open world, sci-fi, ninja, adventure, action, looter shooter game that was developed by Digital Streams and came out in late 2012, early 2013. Now, if all that sounds confusing, on the surface, it likely is for most people, but that's a good thing. Because when a game has an identity that is so varied, it makes the game fun. Now, Warframe is nothing new. As I mentioned before, late 2012, early 2013 is its rough release date, depending if you look at beta or alpha. But the game hasn't always been the same. It's changed a lot over years. From its early days as a tedious grind fest that made you pay for the ability to upgrade your frames and weapons, to its modern day incarnation that is one of the most fair free-to-play models ever conceived. But why am I talking about it when YouTubers like Legendary Drops have, and more recently Aztec Cross as well? Because I'm from an early era of Warframe. These people are newer players. I've been around since 2016 in the community, which sort of gives me some, I wouldn't say credibility because that's a dumb word to use, but it gives me more insight. For some frame of reference, when I started Warframe in 2016, the game recently got a lighting overhaul with better lighting and slightly improved visuals. But also The War Within came out, which being update 19 funnily. 19 was the day, well, I should give the exact day considering the importance. November 12th, 2016 was a day that Warframe hooked me forever. But I didn't know it at the time. When War Within came out, I didn't even do Second Dream yet. Now, for the sake of the video, there will be no spoilers for quests. Because if you've never played them, you should. And if you aren't going to play them, don't spoil yourself with the quests in case you're going to play them eventually. Because they're that good. Now, one thing to remember about Warframe in 2016 is that it wasn't the game we have now. Sort of. A lot of the stuff we have nowadays didn't exist. There was no Plains of Eidolon, Deimos, nothing like that. All you had was the mission tile sets that were semi-random, but procedure generated off of a set list of tiles that were preset for each level, which kept the game semi-fresh as you played it over time. But there's one thing to understand about Warframe in 2016. The community was a lot different. It was semi-split, to be honest. You had those who liked the fact that the game had a bunch of story now. But you also had those who didn't. Which is interesting. Because the ones who didn't left the game. But those who liked the story stuck with it. I being one of those people. And as the game evolved over time, we got The Sacrifice, which came out semi-close after The War Within. Well, semi-close is sort of pushing it, considering it came out almost 2 years later in June of 2018. So that it was semi-pushing it, but it didn't matter, because people still played. And it's probably the most indicative thing of a good game. Do people keep playing it? Or does it fall off a cliff? Like a lot of games, Among Us, Fall Guys, Warzone, Apex. The list goes on and on and on. I could go on forever. Free-to-play games that just fell off a cliff, or games that were turned into free-to-play games. They just dropped off a cliff. But Warframe hasn't. Check any Steam chart site you want. You'll see the game, while it has its up and downs, has kept a consistent player base. And that's probably the best part about the game. The rises are a tiny bit higher each time, and the lows are a tiny bit higher as well. The game is still gaining new players on Steam, which doesn't even include the fact that it's on every console, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, even mobile, with an iOS version out and an Android version coming soon, which all are feature parity. Everything is in every version. The mobile versions may be slightly different than the console versions, but everything is the same. But I'm probably missing one thing. The point of this video. And it's to talk about the moment that defined Warframe. And it's not the moment that everyone talks about. Everyone talks about the Second Dream, War Within, Sacrifice, Chains of Horror, New War. Those are all great moments, and they're very defining. But the moment that defines Warframe the most is the Plains of Eidolon. Now, if you don't know what the Plains of Eidolon is, I don't blame you if you've never heard of the game. Now, the Plains of Eidolon was a defining moment for one reason. It came out in 2016, October 12th to be exact. Now, why am I giving a specific date? Because Plains of Eidolon came out very broken and buggy, and it crashed a lot. But what did the developers do in response to all these complaints? Justified complaints, mind you. They listened. That's right. They listened to what people said. But instead of listening in quotations, they actually listened. They fixed the map. They fixed the bugs for the most part. There's still some that remain, and I'm convinced they're left in there intentionally. But in current day, Plains of Eidolon is a feature complete thing. You have everything you need to do in there. You can kill Eidolons, hence the name Plains of Eidolon. You can farm them. You have bounties that you do. But you're probably wondering, why is this a defining update? Because this showed that they were not afraid to take risks. How many games do you know that would release a full open world environment almost 5 years after its release? Go on. Tell me one. Tell me in the comments, because I doubt you can. But this showed that they didn't care what people thought. Minus their user base. Because as soon as people found out how buggy and broken it was, they complained. As people do. And instead of being the developers, Starfield, one of the developers, that is, or Concord, or Ubisoft, or EA, or the list goes on, instead of berating their player base, they fixed it all. The same thing happened with Railjack when it came out a couple years later. Railjack released, it was very hard to get the Railjack. It took time-gated materials to build some of the parts. Time-gated meaning they would go away after a certain period of time to build some of the parts. They listened, they fixed the Railjack bugs, they made the thing itself more fun to play and all the missions better, and they lowered the build costs. Not many developers do that. And that's basically why Warframe is a wake-up call. Going back to the video that made me make this video. But also, it's also why Warframe is probably going to see a spike in players again. Because it's doing everything that everyone wants other developers to do. Have a community manager that actually talks to the community. Have a game that actually functions on release. And every update is free and actually is playable and worth playing. I'm looking at you, Call of Duty. And Battlefield. And a lot of games. But above all, it's fun. Warframe is actually fun to play. The movement is buttery smooth. The guns feel like you're throwing literal bombs at the enemies. Everything just works. Which is more than you can say about a Bethesda game at launch. But I think I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for watching. More videos are coming soon. I wanted to make this first. Goodbye.